Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 31 of the Clown Fiesta podcast. Blue Jay with JNT 250 here, and we got a lot of stuff to talk about this week. A lot of stuff on the Rift, a lot of stuff off the Rift. For those that don't know, MSI has been announced, so that's one thing we'll get into. We talked last week a lot about Regi and his tweets and stuff with Vulcan, and he put out an apology tweet and whatnot and a whole little statement, so we'll get into that a little bit. And then we'll talk about some on the Rift stuff, of course. We're going to go over the best and worst players, or performers rather, on each roster. Cloud9 picking up a 3-0 this week. CLG got a win. So lots of fun stuff. And then we'll get into some other stuff like Schalke might be selling their LEC spot. So we'll get into some of that stuff later. Let's get underway. Actually, before we get underway, we do want to announce that we made a Discord due to a lot of demand last week. Lots of people were wondering what the command was to get a Discord, and we didn't really have one that was open to the public yet. That is now open for people wondering what that's going to be used for. Well, discussion of the show for one, of course. So feel free to do that. Feel free to leave us feedback in the Discord if you want. And we also made a channel in there for, I don't remember what we called it, but basically it's a channel for if you want to post stuff that you want us to talk about on the show. Feel free to drop it in that channel, and we will go through the Discord channel every week. We'll use our discretion to see if we want to talk about it or not. But we do want to hear your guys' suggestions. So by all means, if there's something you think we should talk about, throw it in the Discord. The Discord should be available in the YouTube link or in the Twitch or on our Twitch channel. We will make sure the Discord link is available to all of you.
Now, even that for the audio people, I'll put it in the description of that as well.
Perfect. Even better. So now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about the MSI stuff. JNT, fill in our listeners in case they don't know about what's going on with MSI this year.
So today it got officially announced, and it had previously been leaked like 2 days ago. But MSI is happening this year, which is a good thing because we had no MSI last year. It'll be held in Reykjavik in Iceland from May the 6th to May the 23rd, and will feature a whole new format for MSI. And that includes no more play-in tournament. It now has 2 full group stages. The first one being the top 16 teams from each region, both major regions and wildcard regions, will compete in a 4-team, 4-group group stage. Top 2 teams make it out to another group stage where it's 2 4-group teams where the top 2 seeds from those 2 groups will compete in a knockout stage. So it's pretty similar to Worlds in the fact that, you know, we have a 4-team, 4-group double round robin where the top 2 teams will make it out. They've sort of adopted what they did at the play-in tournament from the 2020 Worlds because they had to adjust it due to there being not an equal number of teams due to the PCS and the VCS not competing in it, or just the VCS, sorry. But It got announced. I'm definitely happy that we have MSI this year. We missed it last year. Kind of felt like there was a big hole in the middle of the spring and summer splits for each league, like quite a long break with not much going on. So that'll obviously fill the gap in there. Super, super nice. I think the way that they formatted this is actually a lot better than the previous play-in stage tournaments where these wildcard regions can actually get a good test and see where their skills are at, measured up to the rest of the top regions in the world. And one really important thing to note is that NA for this MSI tournament is considered a tier 2 team, whereas the LEC, the LPL, and the LCK are considered tier 1 teams. Additionally, the VCS and the PCS are also the other tier 2 teams.
Which I think that's fine, because the thing is, the NA's always been difficult to balance, right? Like, you don't know whether they belong with all the other teams that aren't the major regions, but you also know that they don't belong with the LCKs, the LPLs, and LEC. So, like, it's always tough. NA's the most difficult region to pinpoint where they should go, because it's like you're either putting them too high or too low. But I do think, like, this is fine. I think, like, NA fans should accept that this is kind of where we belong right now, and that's totally okay. The best thing about MSI happening this year is that we don't have to go through what happened last year, and we don't have to worry about our best team missing out on an international opportunity, because that was what the problem was last year, right? We had Cloud9, which was clearly the best team, and they weren't able to go up against what the other best teams in the world were, and we kind of missed out on that opportunity. And a lot of the Cloud9 players from last year's roster said it would have been really nice to get a wake-up call that we weren't as good as we thought we were, you know?
Yeah, there was an interview with Vulcan that just got put out. It was either Sunday or Monday, but that a lot of the players on Cloud9, uh, really want to win this split so that they can go to MSI because they feel like they missed out on 2020 MSI. And to your point, Cloud9 didn't really get that skill check with the rest of the world in terms of where they're actually at. We could be living in a completely different world where if MSI 2020 happens, Cloud9 realizes that they're not as good as they think they are. They then fix it up for summer, and then we're living in a whole different world. But at the same time, it was sort of perceived that Cloud9 was actually, you know, relatively equal to a lot of the other teams in the world at that time. Cloud9 had
Yeah.
completely stomped the 2020 spring split, and people thought that they could give the top LCK, LPL, and LEC teams, a good run for their money.
Well, and I remember the little bit of banter going back and forth between G2 and Cloud9 at the time, saying like it would be great to find a way to scrim at the very least if there couldn't be an MSI, and there was like talks about who would beat who, and of course I think most people would have sided with G2 beating Cloud9, but it would have definitely been fun to see, and I hope that this year we get that opportunity, especially with perks beyond Cloud9 now. Now we don't know if it's going to be G2 and Cloud9 both going to MSI. That's going to be decided in probably about a month's time or something like that. But regardless, it'll be definitely exciting to see MSI get played out this year. It will be over the span of 2 weeks, right?
I don't remember. I think it was 3 weeks.
Oh, maybe it's 3 weeks.
Because it's May 6th to the 23rd. So
Okay, so a little bit over 2 weeks. Gotcha.
it'd be like weekend to weekend. So not like 3 full weeks, but like 2.5 kind of.
And we're expecting more games, right, out of this new format. Like that's one thing that we should expect to get, or is that not fair to say?
Well, I mean, there's like a plethora of games in the various play-in tournaments that they have to do for like Worlds and MSI, and it's kind of like those are just getting absorbed into more mainstream because not everybody tunes into the play-in tournaments because it doesn't feature the best teams. But now you're actually going to see like these wildcard region teams going up against number one LCK and number one LPL teams right off the bat, which who knows, maybe one of these teams could pull off an upset, but looking at
We've seen it before, man. We've seen it before at MSI. We saw Team Liquid go to finals. Mind you, they got clapped, but they made it.
Yeah, but I'd be hesitant to say that any of those wildcard regions could take a game off of like a Damwon or a EDG or I don't know there's another LPL team tied for 8-1. I don't remember who it is. Maybe it's IG.
I looked at this last night and I
Or
already
it's
forget. But
FPX.
also
It might be
watched
FPX actually.
It's not. I don't think it's FPX. I watched them last night. They were in third place before their game and they won. So maybe now they're bumped up there. But
I'm not
FPX
caught up
looked
on
pretty
my
damn good
LPL.
last night. They looked pretty damn good, man. Off topic here, but Doinby played Kled in the mid lane. It was great. He played Kled and Nocturne, and they 2-0'd JDG. Another
Doinby is
pretty
just
good
a
team.
beast.
Yeah. So, anyways, that was a good series. But anyways, there's going to be some freaking good teams, is the point. And yeah, it's unlikely that we'll see upsets like that, but who knows? You never know. One other thing that I wanted to add on this was apparently they're doing Valorant along with League of Legends at MSI. So like there's going to be a Valorant tournament. I don't know if they're calling it MSI or exactly what they're calling it, but they're going to do a Valorant tournament, I think following right after League of Legends. And I don't know if this is like a way, well, it's got to be a way to like also promote Valorant while also having a good location to do these kind of tournaments. But that's just a small little thing that I thought was interesting too.
Yeah, I think, and it's also good just to cut down on your potential travel and time investment during, the current global state. Like, I think Riot actually did a really good job of picking the location of Reykjavik in Iceland, as a lot of these Nordic countries in Europe actually have the virus, very under control, and hopefully, it will just generally lead to not a lot of issues with running the whole tournament. Like, worst case scenario, there's just like an outbreak and like they would just shut down the whole tournament, and that would be pretty shite.
Actually, something I forgot to bring up or to ask was I don't know, maybe they mentioned it, but is there any news about whether there's going to be another bubble or they're just doing no bubble? Do we know?
I don't know. I don't think that was specified.
Because if you remember last year at Worlds for the bubble, you and I talked about this, but like players were complaining that like they couldn't get enough food, like they weren't allowed to leave, so like food was being brought to them. And then there was one of the players, we couldn't remember who, was like complaining that they had lost 7 pounds since going to Worlds.
Yeah.
And Broxa was like, yeah, I'm a big boy, so they tried to get me some extra food and stuff like that's such a weird problem to have, but let's hope that doesn't happen again.
I would think also their previous experiences would help them, with their future events in terms of if they had to create a bubble, maybe they would bring enough food this time.
Yeah, feed the boys. You don't want them to go starving at MSI.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, MSI should be a lot of fun. Do you want to talk about Regi?
Yeah. There was, obviously last week's LCS kind of turned into a huge meme fest on social media after the whole interaction between Regi and Vulcan and the whole McDonald's meme, which is just like absolutely hilarious, by the way.
Yeah,
Like the McDonald's meme is just so fucking funny.
it's pretty good.
But I'll
The
pull
thing is,
up.
though, you have like it's with Vulcan, right? And like Cloud9 has been known as a team to meme like a bunch of stuff. So like it's actually good that like if it was going to happen to anyone, that it would happen to a Cloud9 member. Like this team's just known for the memes, you know?
Yeah, so Reggie put out this tweet and it says, spoke to @VulcanLol and apologized for my tweet. I wanted to clarify that I meant LCS minimum 75,000 and will be posting something longer to explain my thoughts. Glad we talked it through and he didn't take it personally. I'll be more thoughtful moving forward and learn from this. So kind of just to throw it back to his original tweet where he basically said, like, he left a really broad term when he just said you'll be making minimum, and he kind of did like a little mini cover up here with like talking about the LCS minimum. But I think the both of us are pretty like we're under the impression that he obviously meant a minimum wage and everything after
We
the
are
whole
not
like
buying it, man.
yeah
Like no one's buying it though. It's not just you and me that are like, yeah, sure, man.
yeah
Pretty much the majority of people, let's say, in the community are like, dude, like, come on. We know what you meant. You said you would be out of a job.
yeah.
If you say you'd be out of a job, that means not league minimum. That means you're talking like minimum wage. And then there was a lot of, well, backlash that led to some of the apologies, right?
But yeah, like just like you said, he kind of contradicted himself just with his own like first tweet because how can you be making minimum $75,000 if you don't have a job in the LCS? Yeah,
It don't make sense. Not buying it. Sorry, Reggie. I will say, I give him props. Like he made a mistake. He's owning that he made a mistake. But what I don't like is that you're trying, like you're just lying. Like we know you're lying. Stop being dishonest. Everyone makes mistakes. You fuck up. You say, "Look, guys, I made a mistake. I apologize." We move on. But then he made the whole statement thing that's like, "This is what I was trying to say," and it's like that tweet is not what you were trying to say. And he went on about how NA lacks talent and how there's talent worldwide. And he did a whole thing. And I'm like, that is not what you were trying to say with your tweet. Don't feed us bullshit. Like, come on, man. But I will say he made an apology. It's better than no apology, right?
yeah. And then I think it was the next day after he sort of released this whole little something akin to like the Dunzo Manifesto from back in the day, just giving a further insight to his thoughts on the current landscape of the LCS in terms of the import rule and other issues that he thinks there is with North America. And just in terms of like his referencing of the import rule, he kind of in this article, if you go read it, he really just flipped it into a whole there's a problem with the NA servers in terms of their player bases relative to the rest of the world and how North America, just in comparison to only EU and the LCK, has a third of the player base, and then in comparison to the LPL has like 1/70th of the player base because holy fuck, I first read that number and says there's 70 million active players on 20 plus different Chinese servers, and that's kind of crazy to think about.
That's so many players,
like,
man. That is a lot of League of Legends players.
Yeah,
That
and
just
like
goes to show you how big it is in China. Like we talk all the time about how League of Legends is very popular in China. It is very popular in China, like ridiculously popular.
yeah, and then there was a bunch of other issues that he talked about. But one thing that really stuck out and we wanted to talk about was the whole server location in North America and how
let's do this talk again,
there's
right?
like yeah,
how many
it
times?
seems that like year after year there's just a ton of controversy around the North American server location and the ping that pro players get during their games and how NA's just at an inherent disadvantage due to the high ping in their solo queue games and it not being comparable to practicing for scrims or practicing on stage because specific mechanics aren't as trained or are different on a higher ping. And it, this conversation was happening last year with the whole in-house like drama, and then even a couple years before that, just when people wanted to complain about it. And then like so we were looking this up and it was all the way back in, what did you say, it was August of 2015 when they originally
Yeah.
moved the server location for the North American
Hold on a sec,
servers.
though. I want to be clear about this because that was not like I have a great source, guys. This was just a Google search. I just Google searched when did they move, and it said August 25th, 2015. So that's not a. Don't take my absolute word for that, but I mean Google. Yeah, I
Okay,
guess I trust it because
approximate
I don't know
time.
why they would lie about that.
So they've been
Yeah.
in Chicago now, basically since the start of season 6 or preseason of season 6, and you know, there's just this whole, pro players continue to rant about it on Twitter in terms of how 60 ping is really terrible, and then on the flip side, also complain about not wanting to do in-houses, and it kind of just seems like you can't have your cake and eat it kind of situation with these pros.
Yeah, and there was here's the thing. So we talk about ping every year, probably like 5 times a year. Like this is a conversation that comes up over and over and over again. And if we're going to keep having this conversation, I got to say maybe it's time the league steps in and does something about it. We like in-houses is clearly not making the players happy. The thing is, the players I think would be even less happy if they moved the LCS to Chicago or to New York or to wherever. But that's an idea that people are bringing up again. This is not a new idea. I honestly, personally, I don't think it's that bad of an idea. I think that there would be a lot of growing pains. And I think there would be a lot of unhappy people, but at least you would fix the problem that we hear come up every single year. I don't know. How do you feel about it?
We were actually having a discussion about this, me and Blue Jay, last night, about like if they were to move the LCS, where would they move it to? And our potential locations would be like something like, Chicago where the servers are, New York, maybe somewhere in Florida like Miami or something like that. But one thing that I'm just thinking about right now, which is why that's probably not super realistic, is a lot of these teams have set up their entire operations out of Los Angeles. Like
Yes.
teams are since season 8, teams have started like building facilities, and I feel
Yep.
like thinking about that now, like that really wouldn't fly with a lot of the teams where they've spent so much money on all this infrastructure in Los Angeles to just
fifty
sort of,
million dollar
oh yeah, like
facility.
there's the TSM one, there's the 100 Thieves one, there's the Team Liquid one. I mean, I know Cloud9 doesn't have like an actual facility, but to my understanding, they actually own, a lot of homes and offices for their various, they're like one of the few teams that are still doing team houses, and they go to an office to scrim and whatnot. But
Here's what I'll say though: those buildings are still worth money. I'm not saying, oh, just sell it forehead. It's easy. Like it's not an easy solution,
yeah,
but it's not like they would sink all that money would all be gone. It doesn't exactly work that way. But yes, it's not a let's just get up and go. But honestly, the issue is never going to get fixed unless you do something about it. And like I said, there would be growing pains to moving. There absolutely would. But hey, look, if you want the server issues to go away, you have to do something about it, and that's the only solution that's there. And it doesn't seem like there is a good solution. There's a bunch of bad solutions, and you might have to go with one of them. I don't know.
yeah. One of the potential fixes that was brought up by Doublelift a few months ago that is now sort of being talked about again is sort of having multiple server locations across the United States, and then sort of averaging out the ping based on the locations of all the players. So for example, let's just say you have 5 players on the East Coast and 5 players on the West Coast that all queue into each other and end up playing in a game, and you somehow then use a central server for that. So like maybe both teams are playing on 40 ping, or something like if it's dominantly, like let's say 8 or 9 players are on the West Coast and 1 or 2 players is on the East Coast, they then sort of skew it towards whichever side the majority of players are. So maybe in that world, the 8 players would get like a 20 ping server, and that those 1 to 2 players would get like a 50 ping server or something like that. And for me, that seems like the only option that's like potentially viable, because I don't think you can completely uproot the server location and move it to Los Angeles just for the fact that you're now putting everybody on the West Coast, or sorry, on the East Coast at an even bigger disadvantage that the players on the West Coast had to start. Because from my experiences back when the servers were in LA, if you're on the East Coast, you get around 70 ping, and that's even worse than 60 ping. And I feel like that's not a solution. And then in terms of like moving the servers just like to a centralized location, like that then hurts a lot of your like players in Canada who play on the server or something like that, or even any of the Latin America people that like to play on the North American server because it's more competitive, and just all these different things. But like you said, there's really no clear cut solution.
Yeah, the biggest issue that I have with the double if solutions. So first of all, I don't think it's the worst solution, like you mentioned. I think it's okay, but I don't think it's as simple as, oh, this is better for 8 players and worse for 2, so we must just go with the 8. Because just ruining the game for 1 player can ruin it for the whole lobby. Let's say you did move, like you have someone in like, I don't know, or east can you go? Like PEI, like Prince Edward Island. And for those that don't know, that's a part of Canada. Let's say you go way the hell out there east, but like the servers in LA, you're gonna be playing on like 150 ping or something. I don't even
Probably
know.
like
It would
100.
be really, it'd be ridiculous. And like, I know it's bad to have everyone on 60 ping as it already has been, but like, think about how bad that 100 ping could be, or that 120, 150. We don't know exactly what it would be. That could completely ruin the game if 1 player can simply not play the game whatsoever. That now ruins it for all the other 9 players, in my opinion. Like, even though, yeah, the other players have no ping issues, it's still ruining the game for everybody else, because now it's like a 5v4. It's like just a waste of time. So I don't think it's as simple as, oh, the ping gets better for the majority, let's put the server over, let's, have them all play on that server. It's not that kind of simple. But yes, I do think it's an interesting idea. And I know another thing that was brought up, or it was Medios that was tweeting, like, he thinks they should just move the servers to LA for all Challenger Series games. Now, I'll let you go on this one first. I will say I really don't like it, but I'll let you go. What are your thoughts on that one? Just
Yeah,
moving the servers for all Challenger games to Los Angeles.
it's kind of like we talked about it before. Like, if you like, it's just the exact scenario of if you were to uplift the entire server and put it in LA. It's pretty much that now. If you have aspirations to go pro, or you're just a high ranked player on the server, maybe you're a streamer. Like I don't even know where TF Blade lives, but say you're like a TF Blade who is like playing in his Challenger games and he's on the East Coast. If the servers for all Challenger games are just now perma West Coast, you basically just have to move there if you want like high quality games to get high quality practice. So it's basically just that if that were the case, anybody who had any aspirations of going pro or want high quality practice basically can't get it unless they live in said location or live close to said location. So it'd be kind of difficult to make that work. But I think you could argue that in the majority of cases, it would be better. Just
I
like
need to
overall.
clarify. I need to clarify because Ren is in the live chat. I may have said Challenger Series. That's not what I meant to say. I just meant Challenger ranked games for solo queue. I don't know what I said, so I
That's
apologize
what I
if I
thought you meant.
misled. Yeah, if I misled people, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying Challenger solo queue is what I meant to say. Um, yeah, no, it's a huge middle finger to everyone who's on the East Coast. Like, that to me is very narrow minded. And for those that don't know, I'm a huge Medios fan, but I just think he completely missed here. That is a swing and a miss idea. And Alorum like replied right away. And what did he say? I want to get like his exact wording. I have the tweet here. Uh, he said, I think I was the only pro player advocating against moving the server to California / having Masters Plus in Cali servers. Horrible solution that alienates, pardon me, the entire East Coast of the U.S. and basically a big middle finger to them. Sorry, your family lives in the East Coast, is what he said. And he said, I will die on this hill. Like, I'm not changing my mind. It's a terrible idea. And I completely agree. That is how, like, we're already at a loss for like more talent. Like, that's just cutting off half of the continent almost from being able to go pro. You're forcing a bunch of kids to move all the way out to LA because to become a pro. Like, you don't even know if you're going to make it. I think that would just hurt the number of players that we have a chance to develop. Honestly, I think it would be a really, really bad idea.
Yeah, the only other option that has been floated around for the last couple of years is making an NA West server and an NA East server. But, the argument to that is the player base is one of the smallest in the world already in terms of a major region, and splitting your player base in half again would most likely reduce the quality of games as there's less high-level players on the server that you're playing in. And even so, I think that would create an environment where the North American East server would then just be much worse than the NA West server. Like Challenger in NA East could be equivalent to like Diamond 1 or Masters in
Yeah.
NA West, just due to the fact that the majority of high-ranked players reside on the West Coast due to the ties to the LCS, or if you're like a high-level streamer and you're in like a streamer house, or like you want to live in LA to be close to people or anything like that.
Yeah, no, I think you're definitely right. Um, well, this is just something else that I feel like is going to be talked about again, and nothing is going to get done, and we'll revisit this one again When do you think we'll revisit this topic again? When do you think this will be tweeted out about?
It'll probably be in the off season or some shit. Like
I think
after
it's gonna be
Worlds
right
is
after MSI. As soon as North America gets fucking smacked, I think everyone's gonna go right back to what's the problem with North America, and then we're gonna get into the ping issues again. I am predicting in 2 months, 2.5 months, I guess, because maybe 3 months. By the end of MSI, I think we're gonna be revisiting this topic again. Mark my words. We'll see tweets about it. If North America gets destroyed at MSI, that is. I think we'll be talking right up again about the ping issue. But for now, we've talked about it. There's no good solution. Rinse and repeat. See you next time, you know?
take care, comb your hair.
Yeah.
That's your saying right there.
Anyways. Yes, take care, comb your hair. All right. Do you want to get into our main topic this week?
Yeah. So we originally wanted to do this topic actually a little bit earlier, but we thought that it was best to sort of let the landscape of the LCS kind of play it out, and also teams that were running subs at the time, for them to get their full lineups in, just so we could sort of see how the whole team meshes. But what we're going to be talking about is what we think are the best and worst performing players on each team.
Yeah, and we're going to start with Cloud9, right? We're going top to bottom.
Yep. I just
Okay.
gotta pull her up here, but
Yeah.
You can start talking.
Take your time. I don't think that this is not going to be surprising with Cloud9, right? I think most people would agree that the best performer is Blabber. I would actually say right now Blabber is the best player in the league, and I would also say that Fudge is easily the worst player on Cloud9. And with that said, I still think Fudge is getting better. Is he great? No, I don't think he's great, honestly. I still think that he's definitely maybe a liability is a little bit too strong, but maybe a liability. I don't know. He's definitely not playing to the level of the rest of the team. So this one to me was a no-brainer. Blabber is everywhere. He's involved in all of their plays pretty much all their plays, I should say. And I think he's the biggest reason why Cloud9 is on top right now. And of course, they came away with another 3-0 weekend, or with a 3-0 weekend.
As of right now, I would call Fudge average. You know, like you said, I think early on in the LCS, especially in the lock-in tournament, he was a liability for the team. They constantly had to be either sending a lot of resources to his lane to either protect him, or, you know, as a remedy to not lose, was to try to play through him. And even in some of those games where he got counterpicked, or he got the counterpick, or got an advantageous matchup, we saw Cloud9 still having to send a lot of resources just to make sure that he was fine. But slowly, like you said, he's been improving quite a lot. I think he has, at least. In terms of his laning, I don't think his laning is still very good. Quite often, he's still down, 20 CS in the early game due to either poor wave management, bad TPs. I've talked at lengths about my thoughts on Cloud9's teleport usage and how I think they're way too over-aggressive with their TP usage because they just love to fight. And, since they do that, they often TP to a ton of fights, but that often results in the enemy top laner saving his TP, pushing 2 waves out, him losing a plate, and then he comes back into his lane and he's down 20 CS in a tower plate or something like that.
I want to defend Cloud9's TPs, not because I think they're great, but because I understand why they're TPing. So
yeah, like I understand why they do it. I just don't think they should be doing it.
But I'm just going to explain to our listeners anyway. So if for those that haven't noticed, Cloud9, they're always the ones starting the fight. Usually the ones starting the fight. As soon as that fight starts, they are always the first one to have the TP button pressed, like almost always. And so sometimes you'll see the other team able to disengage the fight, and then the TP looks just useless. And that's something that they have to work on, because you have to read when it's going to be a good TP or a bad TP. That's something you need to work on. But the positives are that if a fight does break out, they're always there first, and that leads to a lot of team fight wins. So it's like you take the good with the bad on that. Do they need to get better with them? Yes, but it's not all bad, because a lot of the times those TPs are a huge benefit to them. The other thing that you mentioned was that you thought he was average. I'm not ready to say he's average yet. I still think he's definitely below average, but I will say I think Fudge is in the perfect spot to get better. You've got probably the best team in the league now. After this weekend, I think it's definitely safe to say Cloud9 is the best team in the league. You've got a bunch of veterans around. You've got a veteran coaching staff. This is like the perfect environment to develop a player. And I really just think that we're going to see Fudge get so much better by the end of the year. At least I hope it's the case. You can't ever guarantee that. but in what could be better about this team to have a better environment for a player to get better, right? Like what would make Cloud9 a better team for them to be a better spot to have a guy develop? I don't know what that would be. What could you change?
Yeah, not much. I totally agree. They have a veteran coaching staff who just have a ton of knowledge about the game and have been playing the game for so long. So it's just advantageous for Fudge to be in the situation where, yes, he's underperforming, but he has a ton of tools around him to help him improve. But
You
like
get to play with Blabber, Perks, Sven, Vulcan. Like
yeah,
that's
exactly.
yeah. Anyways, continue.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, talk about Blabber. You sort of touched on it at the beginning. I would totally agree with you. He's the best player in the league right now. If I had to pick a front runner for MVP, it would be him. He smurfed again this weekend, completely just 1v9ing 2 of the 3 games from this weekend, which was against the 100 Thieves and EG. He ran the AP Gragas 1 game and the champion name, the one in the
He played Olaf again.
that champion Olaf. He just absolutely 1v9 in the game. There was like some questions how Cloud9's performance would be affected on the new patch with there potentially be less power in the jungle, but we didn't see that at all. 1v9.
We didn't expect them to get Olaf again. Like, come on, guys. We need to learn this lesson.
Olaf and Udyr are permabanned for a reason. One thing just to talk about that 100 Thieves game real quick. I thought it was really interesting that 100 Thieves made the decision to leave up Udyr and Olaf. And then 2 actually chose to first pick the Udyr as opposed to picking the Olaf, because
I agree.
I would say, I would argue Olaf is Closer's best champion. And if you look at the games that Cloud9 has played so far this year, where they've played the Olaf Udyr matchup, where Cloud9 had the Olaf, Blabber has smashed the Udyr in the early game in both of those games. That was a couple episodes ago where I was talking about his early game jungle pathing, where Olaf, being the stronger champion level 1, just invades enemy Raptors in level 1 to then do a full clear base and then invade Raptors again, and just by default ends up being up 2 camps early in a matchup where Udyr should be, the more active and faster farmer in the first 5 minutes. So I just thought that was really interesting to see that they, 1, decided to leave those 2 champs up, and then 2, picked, in my opinion, they kind of countered themselves in a way.
Yeah, it was weird. I don't have much more to add to that. I just agree. I completely agree. Nothing for me to say more. I thought I had one more thought on Cloud9, but I can't remember what it was. If it comes to me later, I'll bring it up. But do you want to move over to TSM now?
Yeah, we'll go TSM. We're just gonna
start.
go in order of the standings here. Hold on, you got to start so I get the graphics.
Oh, I'm too fast. Okay. JNT went with Spica. I went with Sword Art for the worst performing player on TSM. I will say I was back and forth on Spica and Sword Art. I went with Sword Art because I thought that his split started off so bad. Do I think Sword Art is still playing that bad? No, of course not. I would even say Spica is starting to look better as well. But I think that, dude, I cannot believe how bad TSM's bot lane was to start the season and how useless Sword Art was. I can't let go of that yet. Give me a couple more weeks of Sword Art performing the way he has been as of late, and I would maybe have to reconsider. But for now, I have to stick with Sword Art.
Yeah, for me, I was actually pretty, I had a strong opinion that Spica had not been playing very well, even at the start of the split. I think in a lot of in their first 4 games of the season, where they just looked so terrible, and I kept saying how they were so lucky to get those 2 wins off of Golden Guardians and CLG, because had they played any other LCS team, they would have lost both of those games. I thought Spica hasn't had just a lot of impact throughout the entirety of the split. In those first 4 games of the seasons, I remember talking about in a previous episode where his impact is super low and he's not doing a good job of playing around his lanes. And even right now, I don't think he's playing, that great. I think Sword Art, like you said, has improved a ton in terms of how their bot lane likes to play. And we sort of saw that resurgence from Sword Art when he got on the Pantheon and was super active in the early game, which I think was good to see. And that's kind of the Sword Art that people were expecting. But on the flip side, Spica was supposed to be this player that was supposed to be the best player on TSM and the leader of the team, with this whole big roster shakeup with Doublet and Bjergsen retiring. And it kind of just seems, in my opinion, that Spica is just there along for the ride.
I thought Spica was going to be the best player on TSM
So did
this year.
I.
I'll admit I was in that boat. I thought this was going to be his Popoff year. And let's not say it can't still happen, because it definitely can. I'm a little bit perplexed though as to how he's not able to have much of an impact on the map. I will say last year he was very, very aggressive. This year, not as much. And maybe that's because they were so predictable last year. Like I think I mentioned this last week, but we remember last year it was just they're diving top at 3 minutes into the game, or level 3 rather. They're going top and they're diving, and that was their play every single time.
Yeah.
All of the teams would mention it. Everyone knew it was going to happen, and that's what they were doing. So maybe
Mhm.
he's trying to be less predictable, and if that's not his play, maybe he's having trouble finding out what else is his play. But I still think he can get better. It's been odd, and I do agree that he is definitely one of their worst performers, if
Yeah.
not their worst.
One thing I will say though is his objective control and smiting is still his best asset in my opinion. He
He
constantly
had
is
a
able,
really nice steal
yeah,
over the weekend against who was that against?
Team Liquid, where he heckler
Yes.
malted over the fat Baron wall by the tri brush, and
Yeah.
oh man, we'll get into
Team
that.
Liquid could have played that better, but
We'll get into that game later. Well,
yeah,
but
sure. Okay.
but basically, I still think that Spica can bring a lot to the table. I just don't think we're sort of seeing his arsenal right now. I would like it for TSM and Spica to get a little more aggressive in the early game, because it seems that they've sort of resulted, or they've sort of fallen back to their very reactive and slow play style. And I still hold this opinion that I think they will struggle against these faster, aggressive teams. There were questions whether TSM was the number one team last week, and maybe after this weekend you can say Cloud9 is, but I think Cloud9 versus TSM is a huge mismatch in Cloud9's favor, just due to the fact that Cloud9 is so aggressive and active in the early game, and the way that TSM likes to draft and play right now, where they tend to go for some super hard scaling with the Kai'Sa in the bot lane and a control mage mid, because that's what the meta is, and then you give Blabber any room and he's just going to run you over.
Yeah. But let's talk about Power of Evil a little bit, because he's been pretty damn good.
It's
I
his
think
meta. The control mage meta is his meta, and it's
yes,
showing.
it is. It is. But I still think that he could be a little bit more active early, because I don't think it falls just on Spica to make plays. You will see a lot of teams use their mid laner to roam and make plays. And so I don't think that all the blame can go to Spica for not being able to be as aggressive early on in the game. With that said, he's still hella clutch in team fights, man. This guy is really good on Azir. Like you said, all the control mages, he's a really good Azir player. He's a good Orianna player. He's a great Syndra player. He
Victor.
can play so many Corki, even though his Corki wasn't that great this year. He's still a really good Corki player. Yeah, the list goes on. The list goes on and on and on. And he is the one that is finding so many nice combos, engages, whatever you want to call it, in team fights, that I think is locking up a lot of their wins. And so that's why I had PoE as their best performer.
Yeah, like you mentioned just at the start there, Power of Evil does tend to play more for himself than for the team, because we do see, while, Azir, Orianna, Syndra, and Victor are, kind of the top 4 mid lane champions at the moment, we still are seeing a lot of, roaming plays around mid lane, or sorry, roaming plays from mid lane on a lot of these various teams. We're seeing a ton of Orianna and Azir, like 4-man dives in either bot or top. And, Power of Evil will choose to sit mid, get the wave, and hit plates, or not follow a roam and instead catch a big wave or something like that. And I do think if TSM wants to be the best that they can be and contend with Cloud9, I do think that Power of Evil will have to get maybe a little less selfish. But,
Well, and
when
you
you
have to be.
when you give him
Go
the
ahead.
gold and you hit like past 20 minutes, like he's just going to own you in team fights.
Yeah, and I think you also have to worry about what if the meta does shift away from control mages? What are we going to see from this team? Is Power of Evil going to be able to carry in those team fights like he has been? What happens if the meta shifts? That's something to worry about. But before we move on, I do want to give a little bit of honorable mentions, because Lost didn't look that great to start the split. Hooney didn't look that great to start the split. Those are two players that are looking a lot better also. So I don't think we can not mention that they are starting to perform to a higher level, and I think they also are part of the reason as to why TSM's picking up way more wins than earlier on.
For sure. Stop giving. If you're playing against TSM, can we like ban Kai'Sa against Lost, because he's like 7 or 8-1 on that champion this split, and it's just like, I don't know. Like if I want to beat TSM, you need to get Lost on something other than Kai'Sa. Like it's kind of crazy how he keeps getting this champion and he's just able to like play for late game, and same with Power of Evil. Like he's just like so proficient on that champion and he will just own you in fights.
Kaisa's in every game, by the way. I
I'm
was looking up
surprised.
on
It's the best ADC in the league, and it just doesn't draw any bans just due
when
to.
I looked at the how many games played that champion has, it blew my mind. Like worldwide rather, it is hands down the most played. It was like I can't remember. Maybe someone else can go look it up on Game of Legends, but I think it was like 800. Well, it would have changed by now because it was last week that I was looking at it. It was like 800, and the next one was like 600 or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but Kaisa is hands down the most played champion in the world right now. It's in every freaking game. Anyways,
Pretty much.
who's next on the docket?
We got 100 Seed next. We're both similar to Cloud9 of the same opinion in terms of the best and worst players. For worst players, we both have Demonte. If you've been watching 100 Thieves games, I don't think this should come as a surprise to you. Demonte has really been struggling in the mid lane right now, and I do think that is due to the shift in the mid lane meta of less about these roaming champions like Twisted Fate and Galio, and more about these control mages that heavily revolved around, great positioning in team fights, strong objective control, and, like early game laning. And I think that's where Demonte is struggling right now. And, I don't think he's a bad player by any means. I just don't think that this
He
current mid
has
lane.
been bad though. He looked
Oh,
bad
yeah.
this weekend.
Oh,
Oh
yeah.
my god, did he look bad?
Man, he's been running it a bit.
Yeah, and this is adding a lot more fuel to the fire for all the people that were saying like he's not a good control mage player. This weekend was bad, and I think that you could look at this weekend as a good start to that argument that maybe he isn't that great on control mages. I said last week I wasn't ready to go there yet. I'm starting to buy into it more and more as I see him play really poorly.
Dude, one thing I don't
He's just
understand.
throwing, man.
Oh, he
He's
is. Yeah.
throwing game.
One thing I don't understand is, with this whole control mage meta, one thing I talked about, maybe it was 2 or 3 episodes ago, how I'm surprised that we're not seeing a lot of Echo, because Echo actually does really well into a lot of these control mages, and if you're a good enough Echo player, you can have a lot of success against these champions. And Demonte actually played a good amount of Echo in the past, so I'm kind of surprised that with him struggling on these control mage champions that we haven't seen him whip out the Echo against your Azirs or your Syndras, because in my opinion, those are Echo's 2 best matchups against control mages. It's not as good against the Orianna and the Victor. So I'm a bit surprised that we're not seeing like a shift in their play style and their mid lane champion pool, because it's basically been about 2 weeks now where Demonte has looked like the worst player on that team and is not playing well by any means.
Yeah. Well, I would also say it's not just Demonte. I would say the team as a whole looked pretty friggin' bad this weekend. I don't know what happened. I don't know why. When I was ready to put 100 Thieves at the top of my power rankings like 2 weeks
Yeah.
ago. Whoa, man. What happened?
Not
I don't
anymore.
know what. Even so, we both put FBI as the best player, but I wouldn't even say FBI hasn't looked as good as he was just about a month ago. And who he hasn't looked as good, Closer has definitely looked worse this year than last. Someday, for some reason, looks worse this year than last. I thought this would be the year that he can shine because he has a better roster to play with. But I would say across the board, all of the players are looking worse than we would have expected them to look.
Yeah, I would agree. We both did put FBI as the best performing player, and while he didn't have that great of a weekend, he still had a really good season. In terms of just like laning stats and everything like that, and even just like watching the games, FBI has been looking really, really good. I was originally, had this week actually not happened, I probably would have put Huhi as 100 Thieves best performing player, because I've been talking up Huhi for quite some time now, and I really did think that he was the best player on this team. But similar to Demonte, he's had a rough, past 2 weeks, and like Demonte, this week was really bad from Huhi.
Yeah, I don't know what happened because he was like a god engaged like for the last while, for pretty much all of this year, almost all of summer. He was the one that was getting so many of their engages off, and I wonder if maybe we're seeing maybe it's that 100 Thieves has become a little bit too predictable in that they are just going to dive bot or top early on. Maybe it's similar to what we saw with TSM last year, where everyone knows what you're going to do. I don't know. I can't actually. Ren Zero in the live chat up a good point. Maybe we have to see the Set support because that is one of his best champions. Although I just don't think Set's that great right now, but it is something that he looks really good on.
Yeah, I don't think Set's that great now. I don't think he's that great right now.
Well, you see a lot of Renekton in games as well, and he can just demolish the shield. So maybe that's one of the reasons. I'm sure there's always more than one reason as to why you're not seeing a champion.
Yeah.
I would say that that's definitely a good one. There's Renekton's in every freaking game. But I mean, there's more to it than that. I don't know exactly what the reason is. I just know that the set has been underwhelming, right alongside 100 Thieves. But back to the point about FBI, I do want to say he has this is a pun that I can't avoid here. He has the killer instinct. Like he actually does as an AD carry. He is the one that sees that the carry of the enemy team isolated and he is ready to go in and destroy them whenever he needs to. And so that's why I think that I put him as the best player, despite the fact that pretty much the whole roster is underperforming.
Dude, that pun was like,
Yeah.
I gave it a thumbs down.
I didn't know what else to say. It's the only thing that was coming to mind.
Yeah, similar to Lost, FBI actually gets a lot of Kaisa games as well. And one thing that I might be a bit worried about for FBI and Lost is if we do see some more significant nerfs to Kaisa. I know she just recently got nerfed on, I think it was 11-3 to her Q damage, but both of those two players have been playing a lot of Kaisa.
Yeah.
And one thing that I was listening to Doublelift's co-stream about was that, one thing that he found that he struggled with during the regular season was when you put so much time into maybe one or two champions, because those are the best champions in the meta at the moment. When they eventually do get nerfed, and there's a lot of different ADCs that end up coming up into the sort of pool of champions, it can actually, you can struggle because you aren't as practiced on these champions when they suddenly do become meta. One thing that I sort of point to last year was kind of when Caitlyn just skyrocket into priority, and we saw that Cloud9 had no priority on Caitlyn and didn't want to play the champion and was abandoning it on blue side and whatnot. And ultimately, I think that was like one of their biggest downfalls in their summer season. And I am a tad bit worried for the FBIs and the Losts who, are kind of exclusively playing Kaisa to this point.
Yeah, well, we're gonna see a lot more Jinx as that was brought in the live chat. I mean, that champion got a lot of buffs, so I mentioned that last week too. I expect to see more Jinx, and Tristana seeing a lot more priority, not just because it's a good pick, but because it could be a flex right now. So that's something else that, and I also think maybe not a similar champion, but a similar style that FBI wants to do. He wants to find that straggler. He could leap in with Tristana, blow them up, leap back out. So not exactly the worst champion for him to pick up, but nonetheless, this whole team needs to pick it up. Let's move on to another team, though. Let's go next.
Yeah, we got Dignitas next. We'll start at best performing player here because I think when you're talking about Dignitas right now and their, recent success, I think it's the majority of it's due to Aphromoo. Aphromu's continuing his great performances from summer, where I think we both can agree with he was either a top 3 or top 4 support in the league. And I would say, in terms of performances right now, I would actually put him top 3 in the league between, Vulcan, Core JJ, and Aphromoo, because I think
he's a beast.
I've dropped down Huhi a little bit because he's been inting games. But
yeah.
Aphromoo is like just on point right now. I think the sort of style of champions that are in the meta right now just totally fits his play style. And he still kind of has, the Thresh in his back pocket, which I think has been one of his best champions. We haven't been seeing as much Thresh right now, but it's just like a staple support champion. He can whip it out whenever. He's just been a god on like the Alistar and the Rill.
You could see that like it comes so natural. I mean, this is a guy that's been playing League of Legends for a long freaking time and playing at the LCS level for a long freaking time. You could see it come so natural. He knows exactly where to find the engages and where to pick someone off. He actually, in the 100 Thieves game that they ended up throwing, he was the one that picked off FBI with a really nice combo in the Alistar. He comboed in, but flash pulved. The Tristana ended up getting a huge pick. Things like that are things that we see so much from this roster and from him specifically that it's like, if for me, it's hands down Aphromoo is the best player. And when it comes to the worst player, I don't know about you, but it wasn't that I thought they had a worse player. It was like, I got to pick someone, but the whole team is playing pretty good, I would say.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It was really hard for me to pick a worse player. And my only reasoning for picking Fake God as the worst player on Dig is just because he hasn't had like one of those pop-off games yet. Like, I think he's been super solid in terms of his Gnar games and his Renekton games, because I think he's like been really, really good at finding engages on priority targets, whether it's diving to the backline with Renekton or getting some big Gnar ultimates off. I think he's been really great at that. But I just think that, the other Dignitas players have just shined a bit more. So it was kind of just that, like, I don't know. It's hard to explain, but like, I think like you said, all the players on Dig have been playing well. I don't think there's a bad player on Dig right now. It's just they're beating themselves up a little bit with their throwing of games.
Yeah, it's weird to say also with a team that's lost 5 games. What are they?
They're
7-5?
yeah.
Like they're not like it's weird that like a team like Cloud9 that's 10-2, we could pick out a worse player, no problem. But then with a team that like you've lost 5 games, not that that's a bunch of games, but there should be someone that you could easily find out who the worst player is, and I don't think it's obvious on this team. I will say though that a lot of their throws are actually to me off the back of Dardoch. The reason I didn't put Dardoch as the worst player though is that he's getting a bunch of their advantages as well.
Yeah.
He's had some really good early games. We mentioned his champion pool is like it's an ocean. He plays a bunch of stuff. But yeah, to me it was not. It was really difficult for this team. But overall, I'm really happy with how Dignitas is looking. I'm very much in they are a contender. I'm on that side of the argument. I think they're definitely a contender. This weekend was a little bit disappointing. They threw 2 of their games that I think they could have won.
Yeah, they should have won. It's not that they could have won. They should have won, I think.
And you and I were so afraid that this team was going to look bad. They got rid of what we thought was probably their best player in Johnson, or at least their second best player. And Neo's fitted in just fine.
Yeah.
Really, like, what a nice surprise Dignitas has been, right?
Mm-hmm.
No one would have expected this team to be a contender, and they're looking good.
Yeah, especially with all the import talk. It's just a bit of like a ha-ha to all the team owners who were saying, and they need more imports to be competitive. And, teams, top North American teams are dropping games to this Dignitas roster.
They changed their Twitter name to Dignitas.
I saw that, yeah.
Funny. Yeah, it's not bad.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk about Evil Geniuses next?
Oh, Evil Geniuses. Yep, I got to pull it up here. So you can start us off.
Yeah, this team is, I would say, maybe the worst performer from like the level of expectation. I thought this team would be so much better, and the players that are underperforming to me are really surprising. Ignar looks bad. Svenskeren looks bad. These are supposed to be good players, man. These are supposed to be top tier players in the league. I don't know what happened. Ignar's face checking brushes and dying randomly more than once. Svenskeren is hesitating again. This is like, I said this stuff last week, but I want to just copy and paste it over this week. It looks like the exact same thing. I don't know. I don't know why they look so bad and why they're hesitating on their plays. This was supposed to be an aggressive team. That's what there was an interview with Peter Dunn saying like, we're going to make games exciting. We're going to play aggressive. I look at these players. I'm like, yep, they are aggressive. I don't expect that much different, but that the play is there and it's almost like they're afraid to take it. I don't know what to say. I don't know why that's happening. It's just happening.
Yeah. To go back to your FBI comment, like they just don't have the killer instinct. Like they set up, they set up, like they want to go for these plays and then they hesitate and they're like, oh shit, we got to go for the play. And then they go for the play and it just doesn't work out. Like it was from, what was it? It was their game against TSM from not this week, but last week, where that was just like so clear, where they have this great pinch on Sword Art in the jungle. And, they hesitate for about 4 to 5 seconds, kind of waiting for like, they were like, are we going in? And then like TSM sort of starts to rotate over. Svenskeren and Ignar, jump over the wall with the Rel and the Hecarim, and then they get wiped and pretty much lose the game off of it. And it is tough to see, with this, the caliber of players that are on this EG roster and, kind of the mixed results they're producing, losing to, they're just like losing to teams that they should be better than. And
yeah,
in a season where, all of these games matter for like Worlds implications, like kind of sucks to see.
Now, what is their record? They are
7-5,
right?
But to be honest, they should be better than this. Like,
I think they're lucky to be 7-5 from how they're playing.
I mean, yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's weird. Like EG is just like a weird team. Like I don't know what else to say. Like you mentioned, like Svenskeren and Ignar, they've to me, they've kind of like fallen off a cliff a little bit from like their previous forms and what we've seen. I think for Ignar, it's much more recent, but for Sven Skaren, he was the MVP of the split in Season 9 Summer, and he came over to Evil Geniuses. Had a pretty good first split, I would say, after a rough start, where EG ended up making Spring Finals, lost to Cloud9, and then had, kind of a rough summer split, but I think a lot of EG's problems were more bot lane related than they were on the rest of the map, because I think Bang and Zazel weren't the best. But coming into this season, like you said, like he's just been looking really, really bad. He's hesitating on a lot of these champions, which you just can't hesitate on, like the Heckrooms and the Olafs. And in terms of Ignar, this was like a player who always seemed to find the perfect fight, whether it was 10 minutes into the game, whether it was 40 minutes into the game, and he just can't seem to find his fights. He's either going in too early, or he's not coordinated with his team and diving in a spot where the rest of the team can't reach, and it's just looking really weird from the whole EG side.
Yeah, I completely agree, but Impact,
he's
still
beast.
Looking really good, man.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have picked this guy to be the best player in the lineup, but I have no doubt that he has been their best player in the lineup. He's looked really good. He's played a bunch of different stuff. His Renekton, we saw that at the start of the year, and we're like, is that going to continue? Yeah, his Renekton's looked pretty good still. I think that definitely a really good surprise for how good he's looked. It's like a little bit of a resurgence for Impact, honestly.
Yeah, I did say that I thought that Impact to EG was going to be like the most underrated move of the offseason, and I think we're kind of seeing that. The top lane champion pool is like perfect for his playstyle and like his history. Like the whole top die was like from Shen and Gnar, and Shen and Gnar are like two of his most played champions of the split. Actually, I don't even know about Gnar, but he has a lot of Shen games. But Gnar is definitely in his wheelhouse. But it's kind of like the perfect meta for Impact right now.
I still would like to see Impact get the counter pick. I don't know how often they're really giving it to him or not. But I would like to see him on a Jace or an Aurelia. Like we see so much Gnar, and I mentioned how much I want to see those two picks played into the Gnar to absolutely smash that lane. That's the only thing that I think I'm missing from Impact is I want to see them put the game in his hands, because we don't see that happen all that often.
Yeah. The only other player that I potentially thought about giving best player on EG2 was Jizuke, but he has a few too many int moments.
He just has to throw the game away. Yeah. He'll get leads. He's very good in lane. He's very good at getting priority. And then he's like, I'm going to go in now. And then, well, we know what happens after that.
Mm-hmm. All right. We got Team Liquid up next. Another one where we agree. Worst performing player for Team Liquid has been Tactical. I think it's fairly yeah, like, man, he two games of this season, he is completely solo lost for his team. One was the TSM game this past weekend, and the other was the first game of the split against Immortals, where Destiny was just like hooking him. Destiny hooked him like 4 times in a row when he was playing Senna, and like, because if people don't remember in that Immortals game, yes, a revenge, that was like the whole Popoff game for revenge where he solo killed Alfari twice. But don't forget, like, Team Liquid was actually back in that game and at one point was up gold again. But Tactical got hooked like 3 or 4 times in a row. They lost the game off of that. And man, if you watch that TSM game this weekend, Tactical was running it again.
I think it's really sad because we know that Tactical can be good. We saw him perform really well in summer last year and at Worlds. And so that's why I think it's sad to see him pretty much, like you said, solo losing some of their games. He's had some good performances too, but I think that that's going to happen when you play on one of the most skilled teams in the league. So I think that we can expect a little bit more out of him. I would also say that we can expect more out of Core JJ. I think he's been much better as of late, but as of the whole season, I don't think Core JJ's been playing to the level that we expect him either. Mm-hmm. And I think the same goes for Jensen. So a lot of underperforming players on this lineup, Tactical being the biggest one for sure. They're still a good team though. I'm still buying. I don't know about you, but I still think this team's going to be good.
They're definitely, I would still say that they're better than their 7-5 record. But the thing with Tactical is yes, he's kind of inting games away, but to me, he's still one of the best like mechanical AD carries in the league. I would say he's either like tied with Sven or just under Sven in terms of just straight mechanics, or he could be better. but it's
He's
just
a great team fighter,
yeah,
honestly. He's
yeah,
very good in team
and
fights.
it's just like his macro and positioning has not been the best recently, and hopefully they can get that under control because we're just seeing in a lot of these Team Liquid games like they end up just getting like 2K gold leads straight off laning. Like it's just off of CSing and tower plates, and no other team in the league right now is just able to get a 2K gold lead off of doing nothing. And that's what Team Liquid just does. And it's just a matter of, having the proper positioning, objective control, and just, knowing your limits, I guess.
Well, and then we look at the top lane, and you and I both went with Alfari as their best player. I will say though, I didn't think he looked that great this weekend, especially his Gragas. His Gragas looked really bad. Like it was kind of funny how many body slams he just kept whiffing, or
He
they would
was
go in like
choking hard.
random directions. Like it was really really funny. Still though, I can't look at one weekend and be like this guy's bad. He's still playing really really well. For this split, he's had a good season so far, and he's one of the reasons, probably the biggest reason why they're getting the early game leads. He's smashing a lot of top laners in laning phase.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of those like early game leads are often in the top lane where Alfari's up 20 to 30 CS, and we're often seeing Team Liquid getting an early Rift Herald and just shoving it top lane for the free money.
One thing I want to ask you though, because Core JJ he tweeted out that he thinks they're going to finish 13-5, meaning he thinks they're going to win out for the rest of spring. Do you think they win out for the rest of spring? Do you think they can
Core
do it?
JJ is becoming a little bit of a memer on Twitter, and I think that's
His Twitter game is getting good, man. It's like he's picking up the slack for losing double lift.
He's full NA right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't say 13-5 is like. I don't think they'll go 13-5. I think.
Let me pull up the schedule here. Let me see.
They still have Cloud9.
Yeah.
They still have 100 Thieves
this week coming up.
They have 100 Thieves still, I believe.
I think they beat 100 Thieves
right
now.
I'm just saying these are like tough. Like
yes,
they have Dignitas again. I think Dignitas could beat them. I think those are like those three teams they still have to play. EG, we'll see. There. I don't know. I just think it's just more likely that they go 5-1 and end up losing to a Cloud9, a Dig, or 100 Thieves. I don't think they'll lose to. I think in terms of the bottom tier teams they still have CLG, they still have Golden Guardians, and they still have one other one. They played FlyQuest. They played Immortals. Who else did they play last week? FlyQuest.
I don't know. I just closed it. I just closed it. Anyways, I don't think they can do it. Maybe. Well, I shouldn't say I don't think they can do it. I just don't think they will do it.
Yeah. I think realistically,
there's too much to clean up right now. Honestly, there's too much to clean up.
I think they'll lose to Cloud9 this week.
Yeah, Cloud9 is definitely looking a lot better. That's the one thing that I wanted to mention about Cloud9 earlier that I forgot to mention was that Cloud9 is playing a bunch of different stuff too. It feels like they're really trying to build up their arsenal and have a bunch of different weapons that they could bring out. The Gragas Yasuo is something that we haven't seen yet this year. We see perks on Rise trying to go split push in the side lanes. We see him on Tristana. We're seeing Cloud9 play a bunch of different stuff, and that's the other thing that I meant to mention earlier about Cloud9 as to why I think they're not only they're winning games, but they're also doing it with a lot of different styles and a lot of different drafts. So that's another good thing for them. But anyways, Immortals is next.
Yep. I just gotta pull it up here. So start us off.
Immortals. So I actually had trouble picking a worse player, not because I think that all these players are super bad, but I don't think they've been great. I was in between Destiny, Race, and Revenge. I ultimately went with Destiny because he's just been on a different page. It's not even so much that he's playing just strictly bad. He's just been on a different page than a lot of his teammates. And I think that's one of the main reasons, or one of the main things that's hurting the roster. It's not that his engagers are bad. It's just they're not in sync with his team members. And so that's why I went with Destiny. I see that you went with Race, and I'm like, yeah, I could get behind that because I don't think he's been that great either. But I will say that I don't think anybody on this roster, this is similar to Dignitas, where it's like, I don't think anyone on this roster has absolutely been really bad. It's just, I don't think that those three players have been good. That's why I think they have a losing record.
Yeah. I definitely think that in terms of their worst performing player, it was somebody in the bot lane. And I kind of used my same logic that I went with Dignitas in terms of Race is just like there. Like, and he's not there in terms that like Fate God's there and he's doing a lot of good things, but he hasn't done anything great. It's more that like Race just like hasn't done anything really. Like
If
with
you were to
Destiny,
sub in another AD carry, you wouldn't notice. Is that what you're saying?
like
Like
put
if
up
you were to,
like you just insert Apollo Price into this lineup and it's like,
yeah,
yeah, like that's what I mean. Like Destiny, he has had like good and bad moments.
that's
But
fair.
I don't know. I feel like if I would I rather have a player that's just there, or would I rather have a player that like has does like something good and something bad? Because I feel like part of like being a good player is like having that proactivity and like you mentioned, that killer instinct. With Destiny, sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's a bad thing. But I don't know. I feel like I would just rather have a more proactive player than a more passive player, and that was kind of
Me
my
too.
reasoning there.
I've always been on that side. I think that's a very fair argument here. I would always prefer to have the proactive player. You can't wait for the other team to do something and just play reactive. I think too many times you'll get punished with that. I do think generally the first team to make a play is the one that has the advantage. So I can get behind that. Now, the best player, I think we had no doubt on this one. It's been Insanity. We talked about last week how we thought he's been really good, and he's quietly having a really good season because he's on a team that's below 500. This guy's just a beast, man.
Yeah.
I think he's been really good. He's one of the players I'm most excited for as far as development goes. To me, he is still a developing player because he's still new to the league, and he's not playing like a development player though. He's playing like he's been here for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I said this last week, but I put Insanity in the top 5 of LCS mid laners, and I'd put him even just a small step below, um, mid, somebody like Jizuke, maybe not small, but a step below Jizuke, and then maybe 2 steps below your Perks, your Power of Evils, and your Jensens, because I think he's been playing really, really well. Like, I've said this for 2 weeks in a row now. Like, go watch Insanity's games and watch his early laning. It is so good. Like,
Yeah.
it's just really good. Like, I don't know what else to say. Like, he's becoming just like one of my favorite players, just based on like the Insanity got the juice meme that like I had from last year where he was drinking orange juice on the thing. But like, I don't know, he's just becoming one of my like favorite LCS players that's not on Cloud9, because I pretty much exclusively follow and appreciate Cloud9. But Insanity got
Well,
me. I'm on the Insanity train.
Well, he's another player that is easy to appreciate because when you have a guy performing so well, but they're on a lesser team, it's easy to want to cheer for that player because they're in what is generally just a difficult situation, right? But to me, he's a big part of their wins. Honorable mention needs to go to Xerxes, though. I think he's been good. I really, really like how this mid jungle is playing together. I think they are the reason Immortals is getting wins, man. And it's nice to see one of the development teams looking like not such a development team, let's say.
Yeah, I think Xerxes has looked a lot better. I think he had a bit of a slow start to the split, but I think in these
Yep.
last 2 weeks he has been looking really, really good.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree. Let's talk about FlyQuest a little bit.
Okay.
Um, you and I would definitely I think we definitely have to go with Jose Diodo on this one. Now I will
Yeah.
say that your boy in the bot lane, Johnson, actually had a pretty good weekend, but I would say that his whole spring has been a little bit lackluster in comparison to what we saw him last year. I think he's still good. I think Johnson's good, but Jose Diodo has been really good. I think for being on what are they 4-8? Like he's been
Yeah.
a player that's been great considering he's on a bad team. I was not a buyer of the like there was a lot of hype coming in around Jose Diodo. I will admit I was not someone that was incredibly hyped around him, but I think he's been pretty damn good. I think he's been definitely their best player.
Yeah. He's been pretty big, and 2 of their key wins, which are against TSM. It's kind of like surprising that they're 4-8, and 2 of those wins are against TSM. But
Yeah.
like you just mentioned, I think we weren't exactly sold on the whole Jose Diodo move, but based on his performances so far, I think he's been doing really well with what he has. And FlyQuest, quite often, a lot of their players on their team have really hit or miss games. Like I think players like Johnson, Licorice, and Palafox have been like really hot and cold in terms of their gameplay. Like
Yeah.
I would actually argue I wouldn't even put Palafox on that list because I have him as the worst player. But we did see
He's had
one.
some good performances
We
though. I just think it's
we had
outweighed
a
by bad
yeah,
performances.
no, we had a bit of a Pala faker performance with the Silas against the TSM, but he's done a great job. The jungle meta still kind of fits him with the various champions that are going on. What I do think will be interesting is I just generally think that jungle eventually defaults to a much more like team fighting role and less about the carry role. Like I know in the early parts of the LCS, it's been predominantly carry in terms of like Udyr, Olaf, Graves, Nidalee, Hecarim. And I think over time, those will start to decrease, whether that be jungle nerfs or whether that be just champion nerfs. And I think Jose Diodo won't be as good if you have to put him on these kind of like tank utility junglers like a Trundle, a Sejuani, or a J4. I think his strengths really do lie in the current champion pool, and he's been doing well with it. But
Yeah, we
I think
talked
we'll have
last
to
week
see.
about the jungle. We talked last week about the jungle changes and what that was going to do to the league. I don't know if we mentioned it, but I definitely think that that's a nerf to FlyQuest, the jungle changes, because your best player is the one that, well, he's kind of getting nerfed since his role's getting nerfed, you know? That's a little bit uh-oh for FlyQuest, if you ask me. If you're already struggling and then your best player's role is getting a nerf, a straight up nerf, I would be a little bit worried, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't think that that's good. Diamond, on the other hand, I think he's been really, really disappointing. Again, we talked about the support meta and how it's like great for engages, and like he's played. I looked it up. I think he had played. This was last week. I don't know what the count is at this week, but I think he had played 3 Rel games, 3 Leona games, an Alistair game, a bunch of champions that you engage on, which is supposed to be right up his alley. Like that is his forte, and he just ain't finding it. I don't know why. I don't know what happened. This is something else that I have a hard time putting my finger on, but maybe it's just because they're just losing the lane straight up that it's like you don't want to engage when you're just getting clapped anyways. But I don't know. I can't figure it out. They are playing a lot of Seraphine in the bot lane, who doesn't exactly have the greatest laning phase. You pick Seraphine because her ulti's so great later, and so maybe it's just a mismatch with how they want to play. Maybe that's what it is. Haven't figured it out yet, but I know that Diamond had way more impact on games when he was playing for Cloud9 Academy than he has with FlyQuest.
Yeah, for me, it was kind of a toss up between Palafox and Diamond, and mainly just what you said before was like the bad performances are heavily outweighing the good performances. Like, kind of feels like for every one good Diamond or Palafox performance we see like 3 subpar performances. And luckily, we saw one of those Palafox good games this weekend where he had the Silas against TSM. He's rocking that new Everfrost Cosmic Drive Lucidity Boots build, which kind of seems to be taking over a lot of the mid lane, or not a lot of, some of the, I wouldn't call them off meta picks, but like the Rises, the Silas, any other like picks that could come up. And it's proving to be a pretty strong build. Cosmic Drive is kind of just becoming like this must-buy item for even a lot of mid lane mages just because of how strong it is. But unfortunately, it's a bit off topic. I have Palafox and Diamond on one of my fantasy league teams, and they're not helping out, dude. Like, it's kind of like I'm a bit lucky that I have like Blabber and Lost, who are like the 2 biggest scorers for each of those teams. But like, I got Palafox and Diamond, and they're kind of dragging me down a bit.
Yikes, man. Big time yikes. Let's talk a little bit about CLG.
Alrighty.
They got a win.
Yeah, they won.
Hooray! Hooray! CLG got a win. Pobelter's in. RJS is out. Yeah, things are still not looking good. Okay, let's talk best. We'll start with you first. You put your boy Finn in the top lane. You think he's their best performer? Tell me why.
Yeah, I got to be honest. I think it's a bit of a recency bias thing for me here, because now that like I'm thinking about it, like he had a pretty bad start to the split, and he was struggling in the first like week and a half. And ever since like the 6th game of the season, though, I think he's actually really turned it on and is looking really good, even in a lot of games that they're losing. We saw him whip out the Kled yesterday in that final game against Dignitas, which has been really cool. I think he's been playing really well on like the Aatrox and the Gnar, and even just like taking a look at his scoreline and even his laning phases and everything, I think he's been playing much, much better than the start of the split. But maybe I'm a tiny bit recency bias because of how bad his start was. But I think as of late, like the last 3 weeks, he's actually been really good.
I don't mind you putting him as best though, because I think too many people are going to hang on to how bad he was at the very start of the year, and I don't think that that's necessarily fair, because I do agree that he has looked a lot better lately. For me, I still went with Smoothie. I think that he's the reason that they're getting engages off in fights. Although I will say that it's not just him, because Finn has had some nice Gnar ultis. But I still had to go with Smoothie just because I think his rel has been really good. I'm really happy with their level 1s as well. Oh, okay. By the way, 12 for 12, man.
Yeah, that's
12
it's a funny
games,
stat.
12 first bloods. and you're like the worst team in the league or second worst, depending on how, like, dude, that's actually crazy that they have 12 first bloods in 12 games as you're the last place team.
Yeah.
That is amazing. It's amazing how you could be that bad and throw all the leads too. Like, it's pretty insane. But I really like their level ones. They're very, very creative, and it's usually Smoothie kind of sneaking by on the rel, getting behind enemy lines. Yeah, and I think that's not the only reason, because I do, like I mentioned, he's great at finding team fights with the rel also. But yeah, no, I think he's looked really, really good.
Yeah, he's kind of also in a position where like the champions in the meta are just like right up his wheelhouse. Like Alistar was pretty much historically has been his best champion. He has been playing a lot more of the Rel. Rel and Alistar are like pretty interchangeable in kind of what they do in terms of like the role with their team. But like you said, his Rel engages have been really, really good. I think, like you said, like it could be between either Finn and Smoothie, but I kind of just went Finn just due to I think more a bit of recency bias.
Yeah, that's fair. Let's talk worst player, because I went with Wild Turtle. I think we have seen a really significant drop off from him this year versus last year. I don't know how much of that was because he was laning with Ignar, who was great. I don't know if it's maybe Smoothie's not such a great laner. I can't pinpoint exactly. What I do know is that he is just losing so many lanes. They did win one lane this weekend, and I was really surprised because they've been losing all their lanes. I don't remember who it was against, but Wild Turtle, this is such a weird thing to say. Like, I feel like I'm in season 5 here, but he can't CS very well. He's going to lane, and he's just missing all of this farm that is not being denied to him. It's not like he's being zoned off of some of this farm. He's just missing farm. That is so bad. Like, that is your income. And like, I actually think that he's a pretty good team fighter, honestly. He's got that killer instinct. But when you're going in,
He's maybe got
and
too much of it though.
Sure, but if you're going in and you can't blow someone up, going in is not good anymore. Like, that's really, really bad. You need that gold income, and you need, like, man, the one game he went to lane, there was no zoning off of any farm, and he got one minion in the first wave as he's just sitting there. He's not pressured or anything to miss this farm. That is so bad. And then it happened in the next wave too, actually. I think it happened in the next wave. And next thing you know, he's down like a wave and a half. There's only been 2 waves that have spawned in the game. That's a problem, and that I don't want to put on Smoothie. That to me is just Wild Turk. So come on, Turtle, you got to pick it up.
Yeah, like one thing, like when he was on FlyQuest with Ignar, like we both thought that like Wild Turtle was pretty much having like his best
turnaround.
Yeah, like he was having like the best split of his career, what you could argue, since like season 4 or maybe even like season 6 when he was on Immortals or something like that. Because I don't know, he's just had a huge drop off. One thing that I think he was doing really well on FlyQuest in season 10 was, being just a bit safer in terms of having strong laning and not dying as much. And it just kind of seems like this guy is dying all the time. Like Turtle, he's been racking up deaths, and I'm pretty sure he has the most average deaths per game among AD carries. In terms of like a week ago, he had like 1.1 more than the next ADC. And I think in terms of like actually the whole league, he's like top 3 in terms of average deaths per game, and the other roles are like support, which is like kind of obvious. But yeah, he's been going in a little too much, I think.
Talking about top deaths in the league, I think we know which player that is. We'll get to that player in just a moment. But okay, I want to, because you got RJS and Pobelter, so basically you went with CLG mid lane as their worst performer. I didn't go that route because they didn't play the whole season. So and also I just think Turtle's been kind of bad, so I didn't go that route. But I do think there is some merit to having both of them put as your worst. Tell us why, and then we'll get into some Pobelter stuff in right after.
Yeah, I couldn't bring myself to like just put Pobelter's face up there because like he's only been in the team, or at least starting on the team now, for the last 3 weeks, or sorry, the last 3 games of this past week.
Yeah.
But in terms of RJS, he had a pretty good start to the split. I thought he was kind of had that like insanity factor a little bit from season 10, where he actually looked like a pretty good laner and like a strong potentially strong individual like mechanical player, but he had a lot of int moments in that first week, specifically on the TF. And kind of as the weeks went on and on and on, his laning got worse, his mechanics got worse, his team fighting got worse. It just started like really going on the decline. And I do think that in this current meta right now is you need to have like a solid player in the mid lane who's not making too many mistakes, is keeping up with farm and CS, because that's really what you need to be doing on these control mages, is just like scaling up to the late game to make sure you have enough income to pump out that DPS and team fights. And it just felt like there wasn't a ton of impact coming from the mid lane for CLG. I think this week, Pobelter, not to say like Pobelter is so much better than that. I don't think he had that great a week. He had two kind of weak Azir games, in my opinion. I think he had a much better game against Dignitas.
Oh, his one game was really bad on the Azir.
Yeah, and it was the first
Which
one.
one was it?
I think it was the one on Friday where they played Team Liquid.
Was it against?
No, sorry.
Did they play 100 Thieves?
It was against 100 Thieves then, I think.
I just remember they
on
had
Friday.
a pick.
I think it was on Friday against 100 Thieves.
I think it was I can't remember, but CLG got a pick and it was right around Dragon. It was like, yes, this is the turnaround. Then you pan over to the other side of your screen and you see Pobelter straying off, getting hit by a Zoe bubble, and it was like, no, man.
Yeah.
You had the chance to get the pick and to take an objective, and he died with flash. I'm tilted just thinking about it. It was pretty bad, but I'm still happy that Pobelter's back. Do you want to get into why he was benched or what we have now heard? Because there was a recent interview.
Yeah,
there was a recent interview with Travis Gafford.
Go ahead.
Well, basically, so there was an interview last week with Broxa, and Broxa said, yeah, there's a lot of rumors going around that it's because of attitude issues. It's not, and he said it's not really because of that, but it kind of is to me. Basically what he said, what Pobelter said in his own interview this week was it wasn't attitude issues like I was flaming my teammates or anything like that, but it was like I didn't see eye to eye with the coaches. I can't remember his exact phrasing, so don't quote me on how I'm saying this, but it was something along the lines of like he didn't see the game the same way his coaches did, or he didn't agree with what they were telling him, which to me is like that's scary, because if you're not seeing the game the same way that your coaches are, I don't think that just magically gets fixed all of a sudden. And I will also say that CLG has not had the greatest history of having amazing coaches after Zix left. As soon as Zix left, they had what was it, Weldon, and now they have Moon. Now I'm not saying Moon's a year,
I believe.
Yeah, but I don't even remember if Song was like a good fit with CLG or not. I do remember that Song was in and out, like he wasn't there very long, right?
I think he was there for like a split or a year.
Yeah, anyways. I lost my train of thought. What were we talking about?
Coaches?
Yeah, no, because Moon is like a new coach and he was in academy last year. So I'm wondering now if like maybe he wasn't the greatest guy to promote. I haven't had a lot of faith in CLG with their coaching staff, and I just think that this is another worry that we're going to see continue to happen with this lineup.
Yeah, like just to talk about Moon real quick, like he kind of just shot up the ladder in terms of like coaching. He did only one split of academy head coaching, was with CLG Academy. I don't even know where they finished, but I'm just going to assume it wasn't very good. And now he's the head coach of CLG moving into 2021, and obviously they're off to the best start. Not all his fault, obviously, but back on the whole like mid lane subbing situation, one thing that I think, with the new season format changes where, yes, there's spring and summer split, but your record now counts as one record in terms of summer playoffs and world's implications. And it's kind of weird to me that they've decided to now sub out RJS when, yes, he didn't get benched for being toxic towards the team. And I think if that's the case, yes, that's definitely a reason you should be subbed out of the team, because you're probably hurting the team more than you're helping the team. But in terms of like not seeing eye to eye on the coaching staff, like I find that a very peculiar reason to sub out potentially like one of your best players for 10 games, and now, or I guess it would have been 9 games, and you're kind of just putting yourself at a disadvantage at the season when you eventually now sub this player back in. Like it just doesn't feel like those 9 games of RJS were worth it at all.
Yeah, well, the one you made me think of the one tweet that Tafo, their GM, tweeted out. He said something along the lines of like the season starts now, or our actual squad is finally together, or something like that. And
Dude, it started like 4 weeks ago.
If you thought that this was your actual squad, then why were you playing RJS in the first place? Like,
exactly.
Something doesn't add up there. Like, that to me is a huge kick in the balls to RJS. He's like, okay, so you never really thought that I was part of the actual lineup in the first place. And it's like, well, why? Like, I don't know, man. I do not think that he is a very good GM. I do think that they need to find a different GM. I think it's time to let him go. I think that they've had big questions with their coaching for a long time now. You need a we mentioned this before the year started. You need a completely to rehaul this team, and I don't think that that was only with the lineup. I think that coaches and GMs needed to be considered in that to change the environment around CLG, because people just laugh at this team week in, week out. I continue to cheer for this team, but I also laugh at this team when I see some of the stupid shit they do. Like, that is just a really dumb thing to say if you're the GM.
Yeah, it doesn't really like give your academy players like potential reasoning for oh, like I'm here I might only be here temporarily. Like I'm trying my hardest in academy, but to potentially get into the starting lineup, but I'm just like only viewed as like temporary or something like that. It just doesn't like give the best like, I don't know, view to your organization and the people who are in it.
Yeah, it's not a good look. It's not a good look. But anyways, that's plenty on CLG. Let's talk about Golden Guardians and finish out with the last team. Well, I think that a lot of people saw this coming, but Niles is definitely the worst performer on the team. You and I have been pretty vocal that we think Niles is actually the worst player in the league at the moment. I don't know if there's much more to say on Niles. We keep going back to it. He's dying unnecessarily. He has admitted to it as well. He's like, yeah, I'm dying in places that I shouldn't be. I'm way too pushed up in the lane. I'm being greedy. He's not managing his waves very well. We can go on and on about that for days and days. Is there anything on Niles that you want to add to that?
Not really, but one thing I will say is I feel like while all the attention, or I guess all the negative attention on Niles is warranted, dude, like Newbie is not that far behind.
Yeah.
That guy also sucks. I would argue that Newbie is the second worst player in the league, and had not for his Janna game against 100 Thieves, he would be right there with Niles, because he's been equally as bad in my opinion. Well, not, okay, well, not equally, because if that was the case, I'd have him tied. But he's like Niles here.
He's an honorable mention, is what you're
Niles
saying.
here. Newbie is like right here, just behind him.
Yeah, I'm not quite as cold on Newbie as you are, but I definitely think he is lackluster, I would say. I definitely think that he is a liability, let's say, but I don't think he's absolutely running it down nearly as hard. Let's talk about where the team looks good for being a development roster. It's not all bad. You've got Iconic as the best player, and let's start with him. Actually, start us off with Iconic. Why do you think he's their best player?
Yeah, it's just, I've mentioned this before. It's pretty difficult to like just play jungle when a lot of your lanes are kind of running it. And despite him having, some poor laning, I think he still does a pretty good job in the early game in terms of like finding skirmishes that are in his favor. I do think that one of his issues is when the game does start, crumbling into a bad state, he often just ends up like, kind of like curling up in a shell and just clearing camps on repeat. And I think that's has been one of his issues, is he's not like, when the game starts getting bad, he doesn't like look for these plays, which, you kind of have to go for when you start getting behind. Like once you start getting behind 3, 4, 5K gold, there it gets to a point where you got to make some flip play. Like, you find a spot where enemy team doesn't have vision of Baron and you got to start Baron, or you just got to like decide and make a dive on like a tier 1, tier 2 tower if you got to send multiple players up while the enemy team is shoving out a lot of waves. Like it just feels like Iconic hasn't like necessarily grasped the fact that like as the jungler, you do have to go for these kinds of plays when your team is falling behind, because you can't just like sit there bleeding out, and that's kind of what they do. But other than that, I think he's done a really good job, when he's able to, work his magic in the early game. I think his Skarner's been pretty decent. His Lilia is still pretty good. When he was on the Udyr, it's kind of just like permaban now, but his Udyr's been really good. I think he's been pretty good for them. I would like to see, some improvements from the rest of the laners in terms of being able to help out Iconic, because at some point, like, you got to recognize he's your best player and you got to even play around him a little bit.
Yeah, no, I can
He's
get
like
behind that.
he's there, like, like the ship's sinking and there's holes in the ship and you're like plugging them with corks and they keep popping out and like you gotta like replug them back. That's what it feels like Iconic has to do on this team.
That's a funny little analogy there. For me, I went with Stixay. I think that when you have a team that is constantly just losing games, it's hard to stand out in team fights, and I think that that's something he's done really well. He still managed to be able to dish out a lot of damage. I don't think that it's going to ever be enough to be able to carry this team to more wins than they have been winning, but I still think that he's looked pretty good, and I think that he looked pretty bad last year. So I think that there's a lot of there's good things to be excited for from Stixay's side of things as well as Iconic. I don't think that it was obvious for me. I could have gone either way. And then I just want to mention a Blaze Olive because I think he's been very hit or miss. I think that there are times that Olive looks really, really good. And I don't think he's far off from being a good player in the league. He's not there yet, but I just wanted to mention him and say that there's still some good things coming out of a Blaze Olive as well.
Yeah, one stat that I kind of heard, which I thought was pretty interesting with Stixay, was apparently he's the only 80 carry in the LCS that has more deaths than kills, which I thought was a little bit like weird, but not surprising, obviously, because I think their bot
Yeah,
lane
when you play
newbies kind of heavy in the bot lane, so I just thought that was like a weird little stat.
Yeah, I mean, when you're not making any plays and you're losing every game, like that's going to happen.
Yeah.
To me, I think that that's just natural that that's going to be the case. But that rounds out our best and worst player for every single team. Now we got a couple of more things before we close out the show. Let's talk about our awards for this week. We got Popoff and Beansoup. I'll let you start us off.
Yeah, I kind of hinted at it earlier with the double lift and the sneaky co-stream, but I gave that my pop off. You know, me and you, we tuned into the double lift and sneaky co-stream, had pretty good viewership on both individual streams. It was pretty hilarious, you know, and during some of the games where, you know, the gameplay wasn't as, you know, exciting as like top team, or like it wasn't really top teams involved, or the games were pretty one-sided. You know, they did a really good job of like just telling funny stories and keeping it entertained, and it's always funny to hear like two like veteran pro players like banter about like the past and all like their funny esport memories.
Yeah, I was losing it
Hmm.
laughing. Like it was so funny. I am not a huge fan of the co-streams. I do definitely think that Doublelift's is the best because he just gives you raw information of just things that like you would not expect him to say. Well, things that you would expect him to say, but not that you would expect to hear on a live broadcast that is technically part of the LCS broadcast, right? Because he's co-streaming. So I think that there's a lot of shock value that you get from Doublelift's co-stream. The but the duo with him and Sneaky was so funny, especially when they're talking. They're talking about how they used to have obligations that they didn't really know they could decline. Sneaky was talking about how there's like, yeah, this week we're gonna have you guys eat these beans that taste like literal shit. And they were talking about the bean boozle and stuff like that that they used to have to do. Those sponsorships, man, are so funny that players actually had to do that. And I used to think about it all the time. If I'm a pro player, I just want to play some solo queue. Leave me alone. I want to do my scrims. I don't want to sit around a couch and eat this bean that tastes like spoiled milk or whatever. Like, anyways, it was a really good. That was a duo that I didn't expect them to do a co-stream of, but it was really really good. So that was definitely a good little pop off there. Um, for me, I went with Jizuke. I went with an actual one like on the Rift. That shockwave that saved the game against FlyQuest was insane. That was gross. Just
Yeah,
absolutely
he
melted
just
three
one hit
members.
three people.
Yes, man, that was such a nice play. And even though Jizuke hasn't been playing the best lately, that was so nice and just absolutely won them the game because they lost the Elder Dragon. Like they were going to lose that game if he doesn't hit that shockwave and melt three of them instantly. And that play was just so nice that I was like, I had to give pop off to Jizuke.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like we were watching the stream and like we were just confused. Like, how did everyone die? And like you just go back to the replay and Jizuki just throws that Ori ball like into the bush and nobody sees it and he hits Shockwave W and three people just instantly died. And it was just like nice to watch. And like you said, like they had that Elder Drake, like FlyQuest got Elder Drake, like they were gonna lose that game. But he just insta blew up three people.
Yeah, no, that was freaking awesome. Bean Soup, I went 100 Thieves. They are disappointing, man. That team is Bean Soup right now for sure. I don't know what the hell happened. They can't get advantages everywhere. They are still forcing fights. They're just losing. They're just running it down. And even some of the leads that they are getting, they're being caught out randomly. There's this team was looking like a team that didn't have a lot to fix. They just needed to find different ways to be aggressive and different ways to get leads. Now it's like they need to find a way to not throw leads, and they need to find different ways to get leads. Like it seems like every lane and every position on that team is looking worse. And I would be worried if I was a 100 Thieves fan.
Yeah, it just feels like they've been taking a few steps back since like the lock-in. Like they looked really good in the lock-in, and then they looked really good at the start of the season. And like the last 2.5 weeks, sort of like they've been doing like 2 steps forward, 3 steps backwards kind of thing.
Yeah. Who do you got for Beansoup?
Kind of like not like I don't know. I gave it to tactical, even though Team Liquid went 2-1 this weekend. But like we were talking about when we were discussing our best and worst players on Team Liquid, and we gave it to tactical. Like he just solo lost them that game against TSM, getting caught out.
Yeah.
And I mentioned before, like this season he has solo lost Team Liquid 2 games. And
Yeah.
while Team Liquid has had other problems in the games that they've lost, when your team is either even or ahead in games and you're getting caught out in these mid and late game fights as the AD carry, one of the most important members in the game, come, post 20 to 25 minutes, it's pretty bad. And like I said, it loses you games.
Yeah. Yep. I couldn't agree more. I think he's definitely been really disappointing. I do expect him to turn it around, but you got to turn around soon, man. You can't keep costing your team games like that. But yeah, he's mentioned issues with burnout and stuff like that, so I don't want to be too hard on him. But he can be better, and he needs to be better. Let's go predictions for week 5. We got week 5 coming up. Week 5 is the second last week of spring. We're almost through spring already. It's going by really, really quick. What is the schedule looking like for those games?
I had to do a bit of a scuffed version of it because I actually forgot to get the screen caps, so I like got them. I got them
Tisk.
last minute right here. But first game on Friday, we got TSM versus Dignitas. Pretty huge game actually in terms of like relative to the standings and maybe our thoughts on both TSM and Dignitas going forward. Because Dignitas drops this game, they're looking at 7-6. They'd be losing 3 games in a row. What you saying?
This one's tough. I'm gonna go Dig. I'm really hesitant because they threw 2 leads this past week. I think they looked a little bit in TSM, not much, but I am worried because they're throwing. But Dig us for me.
Okay, well, just to reiterate, because you were kind of lagging there, Blue Jays picking Dignitas. Um, I'm gonna go with TSM. I just, like you said, I have a little more confidence in TSM just because of Dignitas's recent throws, but I also think that you know I just feel a little more safe with TSM if they can kind of slow the game down. I think that's like TSM's biggest strength is just being able to slow the game down and let them play at their pace. Like they get to set the pace of the game, and if you get into a slow game with TSM, it's kind of no bueno. Like you're gonna lose, methinks.
Okay.
Next up, we have 100 Thieves versus EG. Another like pretty important game in terms of a team that's kind of sliding. Well, 2 teams that are kind of sliding right now,
Yeah.
and aren't looking as good as they should be. 100 Thieves versus Evil Geniuses. I'm gonna go with 100 Thieves in this one. I got a little bit of faith that they can turn it around from the recent performances. Mainly, that's also due to I think they just have like better players than them, specifically in the bot lane and in the jungle right now. I would definitely take Closer over Svenskeren, and I would take their bot lane over EG's bot lane. I do think EG has the advantage in the solo laners right now, but in terms of Someday versus Impact, like I don't think one top laner on that side is going to dominate. I think where the game, like the X factor of that game is the mid lane. If Jizuke gets like his preferred pick, like a LeBlanc or like a Rise or just an Azir into a favorable matchup, I think, EG could win the game through mid lane.
I'm thinking about taking EG on this one. I don't know, man. I feel like I'm gonna take EG. I feel like taking an upset. Uh, this one is not an easy pick. I could see this going either way. Yeah, nothing really much more to add than that. I feel like taking an upset. So EG for me.
Uh, Third, we got FlyQuest versus Cloud9. I'll take Cloud9. It's just going to be a
Cloud9.
stomp fest.
Yep.
Team Liquid versus Golden Guardians. Another stomp fest, in my opinion. I'll take Team Liquid.
Team Liquid for me.
Last up, Immortals versus CLG. This could be a bit of a banger, potentially. This has banger potential.
Who's going to pay the CLG tax on this
Well,
one?
I'm taking Immortals, so it ain't me.
Yeah, I'm taking Immortals too.
Okay.
Next up.
Scuffed version incoming. Hold up. Gotta like...
No problemo. The first game on Saturday is Dignitas versus Golden Guardians.
Okay, it's not going to be nice. But
I don't... Whatever.
Yeah, Dignitas versus Golden Guardians. Taking Dignitas on this one. If they lose to TSM, luckily, I think they have Golden Guardians to like get it back on track.
to bounce back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, next.
Wow. Again, another like week of really good games. I'm just seeing these other
Yeah.
games. 100 Thieves versus TSM. I'm gonna take TSM.
Me too.
C9 versus Liquid. Probably the game of the week.
Ooh.
Most people would say. I alluded to this earlier, but I did say that currently I would take Cloud9 over Team Liquid, and I will.
Yep, me too.
Immortals versus EG. If I remember correctly, Immortals actually beat EG in the previous matchup that they played. And I think I'm going to take Immortals again on this one. It would be considered an upset, but I will take Immortals on this one.
I'm going to go EG, but I can definitely see why you're taking Immortals. I think both these teams are playing around at the same level right now. It's not like a huge difference, but I'm still going to stick with EG on this one.
Man, last up we have CLG versus FlyQuest.
Uh-oh. I might pay the tax. Oh, no.
I might too, honestly.
We're both going to pay the CLG tax. Okay, I'm going CLG.
Oh,
Will you do it? How about this? For this one, we can't change this one. You want to make that a rule or no? What you lock in now for that game? No changes.
Dude. I have to
if
pick
CLG,
I'm taking FlyQuest.
Right.
I tweeted about it.
On this one.
I tweeted about it. You just can't pick CLG. It's just you're not allowed to. They lose.
I'm paying the tax. Okay. CLG it is. Next.
No, it'll be nice. Oh, it's not going to be nice. Okay, we'll do first game on Sunday, 100 Thieves versus Golden Guardians. I'll take 100 Thieves.
100 Thieves.
Holy fuck, there are actually hella good games this weekend, dude. Like,
yeah.
Dignitas versus EG.
Dignitas. I'm going Dig.
Yeah, I guess I'm going to go Dignitas as well, because if I think Immortals is going to beat EG, I think based on that, Dignitas will beat EG. TSM versus Cloud9. This could actually be your game of the week, mainly just because it's kind of like the El Clasico of the LCS. I'll take Cloud9 again. I
have to go Cloud9. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. TSM could beat them, but I just Cloud9 looks like the best team right now. Yeah, so Cloud9.
I talked about it, with TSM and Cloud9. Like when Cloud9 is just able to get that early game lead over you, they're able to run away with it. But if TSM is just able to stabilize and allow the game to go late, I do think that TSM, depending on the draft, probably will just naturally have an advantage because they tend to draft towards more scaling. Team Liquid versus CLG. I don't think anyone's paying the tax on this one.
I am not paying my taxes on this one. Team Liquid. Next.
Brox. Is this Brox's first game against Team Liquid? I believe so.
Oh, that's interesting.
But I don't think it matters. Team Liquid, please. Last up, we got FlyQuest versus Immortals. I will take Immortals. I think I have Immortals on a 3-0 week then, if this is the case.
Interesting. Damn. Interesting. I'm going to take Immortals on that one as well.
All righty. Let's get this scuffed shit out of here.
What's next?
We got our quick news. One thing that is maybe a little bit more than quick news, but we didn't really have a place to fit it in early on to the episode. But Schalke, an LEC team, is potentially going to sell their LEC slot due to their recent performances with their soccer/football team in the Bundesliga, which is the German soccer/football league, whatever your preferred term is. Yeah, kind of sad, I guess, because Schalke has been doing relatively well in the LEC as of the last 6 months. They almost went on a miracle run in the summer split of last year after starting off the season 0-8. They're kind of sitting middle of the pack right now, if I remember correctly. They're 7-6 or 6-7 or 7-7 or something like that in the LEC. The roster is looking decent. Broken Blades on Schalke. Yeah, it's kind of, like I said, a bit sad.
Yeah, and someone in the live chat says this depresses me. Me too. And the reason why it depresses me isn't just so much because the LEC is going to lose a team, but it's because we're seeing this happen so often where LCS or LEC teams are just very, very clearly second or third or fourth or fifth priority from these organizations and their parent companies. It just feels bad that you just know that the owners of these teams don't really care about these teams that much. I'm not going to say they don't care about them because they do, but it's very clear that it's just not their priority, and it sucks to see because I think it would be nice if you were the top priority. Like, there's no doubt that TSM's top priority is their League of Legends team. Same with Cloud9, same with TL. Like, there's no doubt that these teams are never going to push aside their LCS roster for something else. Whereas, like, even if you want to make the comparison to traditional sports, so for me, like, I'm from the Toronto area. I am a fan of Toronto teams, and you will see like a good example is the Toronto Maple Leafs. They also own the Toronto Raptors. Now, I can promise you that the Toronto Raptors never have any issue of getting the budget they need to sign players, and they clearly just went and did that a couple of years ago, and they went and won a championship. But when it comes to LCS and LEC, we see Golden Guardians being like, well, our NBA team lost money, and so now we're just going to completely strip our LCS team of their budget. And so that's what really sucks to me is that like it's just like esports is always the last dog to the bowl for the organizations and for these companies.
Yeah, especially like you said with these teams that, got created in the first place due to funding from another sports team. We saw that in the LCS when franchising came around. The 100 Thieves was tied to the Cleveland Cavaliers. The FlyQuest was tied to the Milwaukee Bucks. Dig, while they weren't in that sort of quadrant, like Dig got a huge investment from the Philadelphia 76ers. Clutch Gaming was partnered with the Houston Rockets. And missing one team. Was it Optic? No, it wasn't Optic. It was somebody else. Whatever. It was somebody else. But a lot of these LCS teams were linked to NBA team. It was Echo Fox or something like that. But a lot of these teams who originally came in on franchising and these brands that came in, like Clutch Gaming, Echo Fox, Optic, like they're all out of the league now. And that is because, like you just said, like League of Legends is not the organization's number one priority, or their funding is, if their funding for their LCS teams is predicated on the success of these other teams and organizations. And we're really seeing that there with Schalke. It was pretty, like, they left it pretty open-ended, where like it was kind of dependent on their relegation in the Bundesliga. What is it, the Bundesliga? I forgot what the name is already.
No, it's something like that.
Yeah.
You're not far off.
But basically,
Bundesliga.
for the people who don't know, in these various soccer/football leagues, it actually works similar to how the LCS work with relegations. If you're one of the bottom teams in the league, you have to play in relegations, and if you end up losing, you get relegated to basically like the B leagues, and then you either have to like do well in the B leagues to come back. But the majority of cases, if you ever drop into those B leagues, you're going to lose a lot in terms of like funding from sponsorships, investments, and all these various things. And that's kind of the situation that Schalke is potentially looking at. They get relegated to this league, they're going to lose a lot of their funding. And as we just mentioned, League of Legends is not their top priority.
Yeah, it feels bad. What's next on the quick news docket?
Yeah, one thing that came out, it was like Tuesday, right after our last week's episode, was that the LCK is apparently issuing copyrights against various LCK content on YouTube, which was kind of shitty because, at least for us, and I would assume a lot of people who aren't on that specific time zone or have the time to watch the LCK on the Twitch channel, we often end up going to YouTube to watch highlights or full VODs or whatever. And to see that the LCK is doing that and sort of taking away that opportunity kind of sucks for a lot of the people who don't have time in their day to watch the stream live, because it's kind of in the middle of the night for us.
Yeah, it definitely feels really, really bad. I don't know what else to say. I think that you're just hurting people from consuming your product. It's like if I'm not able to catch 1 week of LCK, I'll just watch the highlights and then I'll watch the next week. But if I don't get the highlights to watch me, it feels like I could drop off and just no longer consume the LCK.
Yeah. Next up, apparently Uzi, he's been retired, but he's now officially left RNG. So I don't know exactly what that means, but maybe like contractually he's like no longer with them, even though like he was previously and retired. So.
I think he's going to be streaming. Don't quote me on that. I think he's streaming. Is that how it's working? I can't remember.
I have no clue. I just saw the title and put it in.
Yeah. Anyway.
And last up, not necessarily League of Legends related news, but kind of is in a sense. Riot Games is officially hiring for their new MMO. And Blue Jay, I know you're a big MMO guy, big old WoW player over there. What's your feelings and thoughts?
I just think the game's going to be amazing. It's going to take a long time for it to come out, but it'll be great. And those are my thoughts. We'll probably wait 3 or 4 years to see it.
Nice, good thoughts right there. I'll play it. Like
Yeah.
I never played WoW. I played WoW for all of like 2 days. I was playing like a spellcaster shaman kind of thing. It's kind of fun. I don't know. I'll play. I'll play the shit out of the League one.
The League MMO is going to be huge, man. It's going to be a long time waiting, but yeah, they're hiring for it. So clearly they're getting going on that.
That's it.
You want to close us out?
Oh yeah, I mean, we started at the top of the episode. We made a Discord due to kind of popular demand, as you know, a lot of people were wondering if we had a Discord or if we could send a link. We will. We'll be opening that Discord. We've already, opened it up. We're gonna put it in the links of our Twitch page, our YouTube page, any of our Anchor supported audio platforms. There's always a description of that. That will be in there. We're very active in this Discord in terms of if we're ever just like chilling and we're not doing anything or we're not talking to anyone else, one of us might just be like hanging out in that channel. So feel free to like message us, or if you wanted to ask us anything. And like we said, if you have any topic suggestions for us, or just find any information that you think is relevant to our episode or this week's episode or whatever, feel free to post it. Again, we're just looking to hopefully, talk and interact with more of you guys. We really appreciate all the new subscribers and follows on Twitch and YouTube that we've gotten over the past week. Shout out Travis Scafford again for hosting us on our previous stream. It was great to see a ton of new, people in the live chat last week, and a couple from that have carry over. We appreciate all you guys.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. And if you do want to catch us live, if you are a podcast or a YouTube listener, go over to Clown Fiesta Podcast on Twitch, and you could find us on there. Hit the follow button, and we'll be live every Monday, 9 p.m. EST, 6 p.m. PST.
Yeah, I think that's gonna do it. This has been episode 31 of the Clown Fiesta Podcast.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.